to another episode of the I Learned podcast. Thank you for being here. Hello. I'm so glad that I'm here. I was literally sitting here thinking, I don't feel the best. I have some resistance around a subject. I guess I feel fine, but I do have resistance around this particular subject. And I'm sitting here journaling into the subject itself, and all of a sudden the idea occurs to me, I think I'm going to try recording a podcast episode and see if I feel better. And oh my gosh, I just saw deer. 3, 4, 5. I think that's it. They just ran through my yard. That's nice. That's a nice synchronicity at this moment of right place, right time. Because to get that idea of let me make a podcast episode and see if I feel better, I feel very aware of the bigger picture of how many layers of my own healing have come into place already for me to have an idea let me make a podcast episode and see if I feel better. Wow. So it just kind of snapped me out of my own resistance a little bit, snapped me out of that subject, which helped me to put down the resistance for this moment. And rather than having to figure out or get to the bottom of the subject where I was having resistance, I feel like that was very much a pivot or a bridge into gratitude and a higher frequency, where I still don't know what I'm going to do about this subject over here, where I got the resistance. But in this moment, it doesn't matter, because I'm grateful that I have this awareness of having that idea proves how far I've come. A year ago at this time, I was just starting my podcast. I had recorded maybe a few episodes. And so before that, there was no podcast. There was no avenue like this. And because of this last year of doing it, I have, basically any skill, you can't acquire it without practicing it. So here we are on the 83rd episode, and I feel like the first 82 episodes was practice, and I'm still very much practicing, but I have gotten to this place where I can find this energy stream when I come in to make these podcast episodes where the scariest part is that I don't know what I'm going to say until I open my mouth and start saying it. That's the hardest anxiety that I have to fight through, is and that was very much the early days and kind of where I was again this morning, which is kind of funny, it really, the more you practice and the more you get better at it, you think, oh, good, I've overcome my issues. And then nope, here's another dose of going through that again, where the only thing holding me back from pressing record is that I have no idea what I'm going to say, but otherwise the energy is moving me to press record and talk. And I'm but Carly, the individual consciousness, doesn't know what we're going to say. And my higher self is that doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. Press record, start talking. It's all going to come together. So that's what I do. I trust and I take a leap of faith and I press the record button. And here we are, 4 minutes in. And have I said anything yet? I don't know. I don't know if I have, because that's the other piece about these energy streams is while I'm in it, while I'm saying it, I'm not super aware of what I'm saying. I'm more just in a less conscious, more subconscious, more relaxed, translating the energy into words as I'm feeling it, and not really paying attention to what I say. And that's where, even me listening back to what comes through in some of these episodes, especially I've found, as I've translated them to the YouTube channel, I can listen back to an episode and it have the perfect message that I needed to hear for what I was struggling with in that moment. So it's almost like me capturing my own moments of clarity. I can listen back to them in my moments of not clarity and touch that energy again. Like maybe not feel it as fully and as alive as I did when I recorded the episode, but it brings it back at least. You can at least kind of get the scent of it. So again, I kind of go in depth here because I know there are so many of you guys who take in my content wherever you do that, YouTube or the podcast or whatever, um, who also have your own voice and your own message and your own urge to share your heart and your spiritual gifts with the world. And there's so many relatively easy ways to do that. And that was very much the inspiration for the last episode, the starting a spiritual business. Um, and that that gave way to um, it was on the Virgo full moon when I basically took that similar inspiration from that episode around starting a spiritual business, and I was feeling what I'm going to call divine discontent around, I talked for 38 minutes on that episode, and I felt like when I got done, yes, I had shared, but at the same time, I had barely scratched the surface on actually transferring the amount of information that one would need to like literally start from scratch. And that I felt like I wanted to offer it, and that episode only barely scratched the surface of what I wanted to offer, but I didn't know that I wanted to offer it so clearly until I made the episode. And on the Virgo full moon, I got like a 3 hour download of brainstorming and organizing my thoughts and knowledge around spiritual business and put it together into an 8 week course, kind of, more like a community, more like an incubator type situation where these sessions, I see them happening every Sunday morning for 8 weeks, and that it's like a half and half in the 90 minutes to 2 hours that we're together each Sunday morning. Um, that it'll be about 45 minutes of content that I share around the module that we're covering that week, whatever piece it is. And then the last half to discuss and personalize and bring in real life examples and make it real so that in the week that follows, there is time and clarity for taking action on what we stir up on the Sunday morning session. And I'm just so excited. I start to buzz when I think about this course that I'm going to offer, this incubator for really anybody who wants to be self-employed. I would say it doesn't have to be like specifically a spiritual business. Like there's one person who listens on the channel, and she's a photographer, and commented that this is still really helpful, even though, I'm a photographer. It's not specifically offering spiritual gifts, but I am self-employed, and this kind of rings true for all of that. And oh, there's more deer. My goodness. That's so cool. Um, so yeah, I have experience in both opening my spiritual business and opening a brick and mortar grocery store, so entrepreneurship outside of the spiritual realm. And what I'm doing is bringing all of that experience to, what are the we're going to talk about like the bare bones essentials of what you need to know about business. And that's going to take up like 1 or 2 days of the 8 weeks. And then the rest of the days are going to be around mostly shadow work and the fears associated with entrepreneurship and the self-esteem issues that that's going to call into question, and the self-confidence issues and the self-leadership issues, and that it takes a fortitude inside your relationship with yourself to weather and be resilient through the trials of birthing a business into the world, regardless of what kind of business that is. That there are going to be setbacks, there are going to be challenges, there are going to be criticisms, there are going to be people who don't understand or don't think you can do it or whatever else. There's going to be resistance from the physical world because that's where we're creating our businesses. That's the whole point, is that the physical world provides the resistance, and by meeting the resistance, we blossom. into something that we may not have become had it not been for the resistance. And that is the most divinely freaking like perfect setup that I've ever given myself, like right at the perfect 10-minute mark. Like, holy shit. So that leads me to where I am this morning and like my little bit of resistance that I'm dealing with. And I actually have a couple of those that are floating in my awareness this morning. But it's like I'm talking about like this resistance, I'm meeting it and something is blossoming out and around the resistance. I am becoming more out and around this resistance. It's like provoking growth and I'm witnessing it in real time. Like this morning, the example that I have is like my wrist. If you've seen me on videos wearing my black brace, like my wrist has been giving me issues these last few months, and that's a whole thing back into, I heard it a couple years ago, so it's been hurt for over 2 years, but it only was like barely painful up until just a few months ago when it is not, it hurts, it's painful. And this morning I had my brace off for a little bit because it's stinky and I need to wash it because I sweat on it. I would hate to have a cast. I feel, for anybody who's ever had a cast, that thing has got to stink by the end of it. But anyways, that tells you how sensitive I am to smell. But I had it off and I picked up the Moosey, my dog's toy, Scooby's toy, Stella's toy, whoever's toy, and I had it in my left hand, in that hurt wrist hand, and I thought I was just like tossing it, just, no big deal, just like moving it, just letting go. No exertion of any kind. And in that motion and the release, oh my God, like I'm like shaking, like partially nauseous, just thinking about how much that pain rippled out of that spot in my wrist and like, oh my God, like buckled my knees, brought tears to my eyes, like fucking hurt. Um, and so that brought me really, really into the pain and suffering of this injury. And that made it really pointed in my awareness where it captured my consciousness. My consciousness was now inside this pain and suffering. And what came next, I can only describe as like a real life, tangible, practical example of Pisces energy, where when we come face to face with our own suffering, there is a part of our spirit that is, it blossoms, it grows out and around the suffering, it blooms, and we become more because of the suffering that we are experiencing. And it only took a couple seconds of the intense throbbing, tears, cursing, cursing everything. Like literally one banana, two banana, and I'm right there. I'm like, pain is temporary. This is temporary. This is a moment in time. There's another freaking deer. That's so cool. I love living where I live. I really do. Oh, run, run, Forrest, run. Um, anyways, so yeah, that moment of coming back, like having my consciousness captured by this suffering, and then having my broader awareness blossom in that moment to be bigger than the suffering and to be able to tell me in that moment, pain is temporary. And that's the voice that it uses when it talks to me, when I'm in the pain and the suffering and the yelling and the cursing and the crying and it says, hey, pain is temporary. This is just a moment. This is not forever. And all of those little thoughts, like they loosen you up to where you're no longer hanging on to the pain and suffering, but letting it move through you and letting it show you something. And so in that moment of like, realizing all of that, my awareness blossoming around this pain and suffering, the idea came like, what are you going to do? Like, this is where you are. And it was like, again, the Pisces, like a deepening of acceptance in the face of suffering. Like, it is what it is. That's not meant to be annoying. That it's a fact, and that Pisces energy, and like the reason I'm so into Pisces right now, we have the upcoming Neptune and Jupiter conjunction on April 12th, but really as soon as April 7th hits, for reasons, reasons. If you want the reasons, ask, and I'll be glad to explain them to you. But April 7th, we're gonna be like really inside this conjunction all the way through like April 22nd thereabouts. So this is really, really intense Pisces energy. Plus, tomorrow, uh, April 5th, Venus enters Pisces, and then April 15th, Mars enters Pisces. So even though the sun is on into Aries and Mercury's on into Aries, we still have a lot of action going on in Pisces, especially for right now, this time of year. And so, like, it just seems really fitting that this morning my awareness and my consciousness seems to be swirling around this idea of suffering and surrender and acceptance, and all of these are extremely Piscean, as far as themes go. So, as I accepted that this is where I am right now, and that, pain is a teacher, and pain sharpens my awareness so that I pay attention to something. And all of that, there was this deepening of acceptance that said, do what you were going to do before you hurt your wrist. Like, go make your coffee, turn on your morning stuff, like do your thing where you take care of yourself and you do your self-care. Like, I know you're hurting, but do the thing where you take good care of yourself. Like, see if it doesn't just go away. And on my way to make the coffee, I got the idea to put ice on it. That was like a nurturing thought that was only there after I decided, like, here, let me just do my self-care, and I'll be in pain, but I'll be doing my self-care and it'll be great. And so I get the ice and I make my coffee and I come in and I just let my wrist ice for like 20 minutes and drink my coffee and relax and listen to my morning content and just try to enjoy myself the best I can. And there was another deepening of acceptance for this moment of pain and sharper attention to my own vessel and my own my own self. And so this is very much where I was, and I go out and Dolly and I get to talking. Next time I go put the ice away and like make another cup of coffee. And so I'm telling her some stories that are coming up that I'm reminded of thanks to, this moment of my wrist or whatever. And one of the pieces, this really unraveled fast into like the depths of my freaking consciousness. Like going back to like mermaid life, like this one went so freaking deep, tugging at like the core of my emotional wounds. And it all came because I tweaked my wrist this morning. So as she and I start talking, I tell her, um, it like it's happened a couple times. Like people have commented and, like giving me sympathy about my wrist or asking about it, asking about my injury, or like showing interest and attention on this particular thing. And I was telling her how it's very interesting because I have a very split reaction to people showing attention towards my injury, because on one side, it feels like they're giving me sympathy, and not that they're maybe to see, this is where it all kind of like got off. I don't really have an answer on this part, but like when I say sympathy, when I feel that energy of what I'm receiving, when I feel it in my body, it feels like a low frequency. And part of that, I think, is like it feels like there is a opening inside of me that's waiting for other people to validate my pain and suffering and like what I'm going through and blah blah blah. And that I don't feel that way. Like as a, spiritually evolved, on the leading edge of who I've become version of myself, that's not how I feel. I validate myself. I meet my own needs. I take good care of myself. I tell myself nice things. I love myself well. And that's not how I feel. I don't want people's sympathy, nor do I need it. And it was a little triggering to the grown-up me to receive it. And I didn't really know why. And I I go on to tell Dolly like it's a split reaction because that's only one side. There's another side that is like a little bit secretly enjoying the attention that the injury brings me. And then the first side notices the second side enjoying this attention. And now we're in a shame spiral because now I'm mad at myself for being attention seeking. That was the word, the accusation that I hurled at myself was like, that's attention seeking behavior. And I'm not okay with that. This is the first side of me talking. And then I realized that side that's enjoying the attention, holy shit, she's 8 years old. And I flashed back to like it was yesterday to a moment when I was 8 years old and I was running in our basement and slipped on some water on the bathroom floor. And that sounds weird because, like, how are you running in the basement if you're in the bathroom? But like, there was like a furnace room in the middle of the basement, and then there was a hallway that wrapped all the way around the furnace room, that like the hallway led off to the bedrooms for me and my brothers, and then also took you through the bathroom, which was like a community style bathroom because it was intended for me and my three brothers. So like the the toilet like had a door where you could close it off all by itself. The shower had a door where you could close it off all by itself. And then there were like two sinks out in the community bathroom. So anyways, so I'm running through the bathroom like a bat out of hell. And I slip on the water and I fall and I catch myself on my wrist, and it hurt like hell when it happened. And I reacted to the pain. I screamed, I cried, it hurt really bad. And then I got the reaction that I got, which was undivided attention from my brothers and my mom, and everyone was very concerned with my pain and me and how I was. And this is shadow work I've never touched up until this morning, because and I've been aware that I did this, and I just like let it, I just dropped that hot potato quick a minute because it was too hot to handle. And today I realized, like, and I was able to fully own out loud that I milked that pain for more than it was worth. Like, my wrist, it hurt when I did it because it hurt, but the pain subsided way before me stopping dramatizing the pain. Like, I played it longer for the attention that it got me. And I have never been able to admit that because the first side is so busy being mad that I'm being attention seeking, and that feels like conditioning from the outside world. Attention seeking has a whole like insulting connotation around it. And this morning when I owned it out loud that I did that, it, oh my God, like this is the power of Pisces, where like when you bring acceptance to something, when I accepted and owned the fact that yeah, I was attention seeking, I cried and like, milked my hurt longer than I was actually hurt because my mom was giving me her undivided attention, and that felt really good. And I did that. I like accepted it. And what opened after that, like literally in the seconds that followed, was this understanding, like, why would anybody do that? Like, why? Why would you, why would you fake it? Why would you milk it for more than it's worth if you're not really hurt? Like, why would anybody become attention seeking? Where does attention seeking behavior come from? And in that moment, I had this like depth of compassion open towards my 8-year-old self. And she did it because she felt fucking invisible. Like, she felt like nobody saw her. Nobody, like, this is extreme. Nobody cared about her. People, I mean, my mom cared and like people cared, but like in the sense that, I mean, I was born, and then all three of my brothers were born by the time I was 4. So, like, just as a 4 year old, I already had three little brothers, and my mom's attention was not available, basically, from, I mean, my first brother was born when I was 11 months old. So, like, her attention was elsewhere for the most part. There were just more pressing needs for her attention than me. I was able and at least partially self-sufficient enough that she could give her attention to the more urgent causes, my younger brothers. And so this developed this atmosphere where I mean, I know now, I have the language now to say, like, I developed a very insecure attachment. I felt invisible. That was a word that I've never found vibrationally until today. But today, holy shit, like the tears that came when I realized, like, 8 year old Carly, she milked it for all it was worth because it was her one fucking moment to have some attention. And the only reason anybody would ever do that is that they are already suffering a deficiency of attention. That, like, just like watering a plant, if you don't water the plant, it shrivels up and dies. And the plant knows that it's dying. Like, if you if you've ever killed any plants, which I've, I do my best, but I've definitely traveled that road a little bit. When you're starving a plant of water, the mother, like the main plant, will send off baby plants in an attempt to survive. Like, the baby plant needs less water to survive than the big established plant. So the big established plant is dying, but while it's dying, it's putting its energy over here into this other thing. And it's like that just happens. That's just nature. Like, that's just in our DNA, I think, is like, if you are starving to death, if you're being malnourished, either physically or emotionally, that, like, there's a subconscious drive to get your own needs met. It's a survival instinct to get your needs met and get what you need to be okay in the world. And in all of this, I see 8 year old Carly so much more clearly. And I still remember, like, they're all around me and I'm hurt and they're concerned. And then it's gone on long enough and bad enough that mom feels like she needs to take me and get it x-rayed and whatever else. So, like, then we got quality time. Like, I remember being at the ER with her, like, going through this process, or I think we went to the doctor's office, but, like, being in the waiting room, like, with her in the quality time of that moment. Like, it stands out to me. And that tells me that, like, I was so, like, it was such a barren desert of quality time that, like, that moment was special. That, like, that's why I did it. And oh my God, like, that feels, again, like the tears that came when I realized, like, no, I felt invisible. And that was a normal, natural response for me to behave that way. And now, like right now, today, present day, I have, like, it's the same wrist also, which is very interesting. And I have this injury and I get this attention, and 8 year old Carly was still enjoying the attention. And today I feel like, I mean, this is what shadow work is really about, is like integrating those pieces of ourselves that got fragmented so long ago. Because 8 year old Carly doesn't understand that, you know, we have coping skills, we meet our own needs. Not that you can't, like, cooperate with other people to get your needs met. That's not what I'm saying. But she felt untethered in the world, like she had nowhere to belong, that, like, there was nothing holding her to the planet. And for, a couple hours, she felt fully seen and connected, and that was, like, life-giving in a way where she didn't want to let it go. And that makes sense. And that added self-compassion towards myself, like, I just, like, I feel so grateful for that blossoming of understanding. And as that understanding came, there was this other understanding that bloomed out of that one that went like, I wonder. how much of my desire to be a professional public speaker, that's been my dream since I was 7 years old, how much of that desire and dream comes from feeling invisible in my childhood. The fact that I wanted to grow up and be on stage in front of thousands of people, and that's still my dream. That's like always been my dream, is to be that, like travel around and give speeches, stand on stages, talk to thousands of people at once. And I've had that dream since I was 7, and how much of that dream came out of feeling invisible. I got to think a lot, because at 7, I gave my first speech. That's what happened that gave me this dream, where I joined 4-H, a 4-H club in my county. And in 4-H, you give what are called project talks. You have projects, either like you're making something for sewing, or you're raising a bucket calf, or you're cooking a pie for the baking thing, or whatever it is, taking pictures for photography. There are all kinds of different projects, and you choose whatever works for you. So I did like sewing and photography and buymanship and modeling. I did all of that in 4-H, which crazy. Anyways, okay, so I'm 7, and all members of the 4-H club have to give project talks. And based on how old you are, that's how many minutes your project talk is expected to be. So at age 7, you need to get up there and talk for like 2 to 3 minutes, and then you're good to go. So I had made a tote bag for sewing, and it had a teddy bear on the front, which I picked out myself. And I was very proud of it. It was very well made. And so, yeah, I got up there with my tote bag, and I showed him the tote bag, and I showed him how we hemmed it and how you have to pin it first, and then you sew it and you put it together, and you like, put the pattern on there and cut it out. My steps are all out of order, but and then like you make the pocket and you put the pocket on there, and that's how that piece works. And like you tell them about, here's what I did and here's what I learned and here's how I did it and all of that. And for 3 minutes at age 7, I had like 60 people giving me their undivided attention. And I don't know which I want to say, like, and a star was born or a monster was born, because the dream was born in that moment of like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to be in front of people talking. And I recognize that immediately. And again, I wonder how much of like how impactful, how much that experience imprinted on me, how extreme it felt, how intense it felt to have all that attention on me for those 3 minutes. Like, how extreme was that thanks to feeling invisible in my life up to that point? I had like not felt seen at all. And then here's 60 people looking at me. And I'm like, wow, where can I find more excuses to give more speeches, because that is addictive. And so I started doing competitive public speaking when I was in 5th grade. So like that was just the whole route just unfolded, and it came, I'm now seeing more than ever that dream that I'm closer to than ever before, giving myself a stage, on my own platforms to use my voice and put myself out there for anybody who wants to listen. That this dream was born out of my suffering, that this dream was born out of feeling invisible, and how lonely and isolating and how much of a black sheep I knew I was. I called myself an alien till I was like 28 years old. Like, I just knew I'm not like the other humans. And, maybe someday it'll all make sense. But right now it mostly just hurts. And little 8-year-old Carly today, she grew up a little bit. She got to see full circle what her plight was for. And because now I see, like, I already am a professional public speaker. I'm a professional content creator, basically. And that all of this path and everyone who ever listens to anything I ever create that little girl Carly is really who's serving them through her pain, through her suffering. Like, she set the stage for my YouTube channel, for my podcast, for my desire to use my voice and stand on a stage and put myself in front of people and be heard. Her suffering did that. And all of this feels so timely again because my Astrology and Coffee live stream on April 1st was all about Venus and Pisces, and really just this Pisces season, this extended winter that we find ourselves in with all this Pisces energy. And in April, like I said, we have the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction, Venus and Mars, both in Pisces. We have the Taurus eclipse. The ruler of Taurus is Venus, so that's in Pisces. So like Pisces is just center stage for this month of April. And my prediction was that, Pisces as a sign, the highest frequency is compassion and unconditional love of the self and others as an extension of self. And that this month of April is really elevating our compassion skills, abilities, capacity to the next level. And that just like where I started, like compassion blooms around suffering. So that, basically if you're calling for an increase in compassion, ipso facto, you're predicting an increase in suffering. And this morning, I think, was very much marked by suffering, both my physical wrist suffering and the shadow work of acknowledging 8-year-old Carly and her attention-seeking behavior and why she did that and her pain and her plight, and not just judging her, but hearing her out and understanding, where is she coming from? Why would she do that? Why would she act like that? It's easy for adult Carly to say, like, you shouldn't be that way, but one, that ship has sailed, and two, like, let's really do some shadow work here and see if we can understand, like, why was I doing that, quote unquote unhealthy behavior to begin with? And as I went inward and was introspective around those things, like, one thought after another came up, like remembering my wrist injury when I was little. And all of the different pieces that, I didn't go searching for the pieces. They were kind of woven together and handed to me one at a time over the course of this like 30-minute conversation with Dolly. So it seems very timely and very practical and like a real life version of what that really does look like, as far as, it's easy enough to say that Pisces is where we transcend our suffering and we forgive and we let go of the hurt that was there. And that doesn't just happen. That hurt it's called a samskara in I don't even know enough about it to really talk about it, but it's come up so much around me in multiple different things that I've listened to lately, from Dr. K and The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. They both talk about samskaras, but it's like an emotional event where it's a imprint of the exact emotions and sensory experience and everything that was inside that moment. It's like burned into your soul, imprinted into your soul, and that energy is there, held inside your energetic field. Inside your auric field is this like pocket of wounding that was created during that one moment of an intense emotional experience. And that these samskaras, they're in there, and when they're released, they are released with the exact feeling and emotion of what you felt when the samskara was generated, when it was created in your soul. So this month of April, like these shadows rising to the surface, these samskaras, these emotional imprints that have happened to us either in childhood or past lifetimes, it does hurt as they come to the surface, but it's not to torture us. It is for them to be released. It is for us to let them go. It is for us to not just judge that, oh yeah, I made a mistake when I was little, or I did something that was less than desirable when I was little, but to really open our heart to our former self and say, why? Why would that have happened? Why would I have done that? And giving ourselves that added boost of self-compassion is like really what Pisces energy is all about. And like I said, like as soon as we bring acceptance to what is, to like, okay, well, I did this attention seeking behavior thing when I was 8 one time. That is what it is. And I accept that I did that, and that is how it played out. And in accepting that, more was revealed that I had never been able to see before around the why and the genuine suffering of little girl Carly that I had never let myself really heal. And the tears that came this morning, they felt like that samskara being released. They felt like grieving the childhood I didn't have. And that is like the other side of the coin of accepting the childhood I did have. That the two go hand in hand. You can't have acceptance of what is without grieving the loss of what you wanted, what you thought you needed and didn't get. That didn't happen. And the whole forgiveness piece on the acceptance side is the letting go on the hurt side, the suffering side of like what was hurt me. And to forgive, I have to recenter myself inside my power, inside my own responsibility for my soul's evolution in this lifetime, my larger awareness of, like my consciousness and what goes on in my mind is an experiment that my soul, my wider awareness, my wider consciousness is having. And out of moments like that 8-year-old falling and hurting herself and reacting genuinely, organically, it hurt. The reaction was big. I have a Leo moon. Maybe it was a little bit dramatic, but that's just me. But the reaction that I got taught me that when you dramatize your pain, people will listen. And that started an unhealthy cycle that I can see how not only did that play out with my mom at other times throughout our lives, but it also recreated itself inside of my romantic relationships and partnerships where, again, I knew that if you dramatize your pain, people will listen. And that, like where I'm sitting right now, like that has got to be the definition of attention seeking behavior. And I guess that makes me guilty on all charges because I recognize that that 8-year-old self was not the only version of me that has pulled shit like that, that has played up my own pain and suffering to get sympathy from other people. And all that ever got me was a loop where to keep their attention, I had to suffer. And that put me in chronic suffering, and giving up the need for their attention and their validation was what set me free from my own suffering. And so there's like very much inside of all of this, I think, is like kind of the victim complex, which again, I feel like I very much resonate with. I'm coming out of it. I'm healing and transmuting that energy into something different, but into more of this like personal self acceptance and self compassion and self understanding and transmuting my own samskaras. Like, I'm not worried about what other people are telling me. I'm worried about what pockets of traumatized energy do I have in me still that are waiting to be released, because here I am thinking I've healed a lot, and I have. There's no doubt about it. And yet this morning I cried 8-year-old Carly's tears. I released pain and suffering that I've been holding since my very earliest childhood. And not all of it, probably, but a good big chunk, to where, holy shit, all of this full circle, all of it, all the way back around is I threw that toy for Scooby and I tweaked my wrist, and it hurt so bad I cried. I suffered so bad that I was locked in my suffering for the briefest of instants before my wider self said pain is temporary. And that was the door opening to walk out of my suffering and bring compassion to this moment where I am suffering, right? Like, this is just the temporary experience. It isn't who I am. It's not my permanent condition. And that, again, it's like another door opening to like further move forward out of the suffering into acceptance. So I don't know that I have like one big takeaway or anything fancy like that, but this did feel super helpful to me personally and relevant to all of this Pisces energy that is swirling in the sky right now. As above, so below. I feel like all of the Pisces frequencies from the low to the high are being activated right now. The volume knob is being turned up on both the suffering and the compassion that blooms around the suffering. And this morning, I can genuinely, honestly say from the bottom of my heart, I am grateful for the suffering of my childhood, for where it's led me right here, right now, today. I'm genuinely grateful for the suffering of my wrist this morning that led me through that conversation of realization and revelation that released stagnant, pent up energy that I've been carrying for decades, maybe lifetimes. I'm grateful for my suffering. And if there, like, is there anything more Piscean that we could say than I'm grateful for my suffering? Is that not the definition of transcendence and healing and letting go? Opening up this energetic space in our grid that used to be occupied by suffering and needing other people to tell us how justified we are to be sad about our suffering. That took up a big chunk of my energy for quite a bit of my life. And today I released a good big lot of that. And that feels like that's only creating space for more genuine source love and compassion to flow in. Less occupied with the outer and the response, and more occupied with the inner and genuinely honoring what the pain and suffering is here to teach me, not what it can garner me, how I can leverage it for greater attention from the outside world. And that is not to condemn anyone who finds themselves inside of a pattern of attention-seeking behavior like right now today, because obviously I'm talking from a very like nearly present tense standpoint. So like waking up inside of these patterns of thought and behavior, waking up one little bit more with each passing moment of suffering or joy or whatever emotion is present, letting it wake us up one little bit more, again, feels very Piscean. Pisces is the infinite, it's the all, it's the vastness of the infinite. And in Pisces, we know that there is never a completion, there's never a done, there's never an enough. So while Pisces shadow is very much around like not enoughness and needing others to tell us we're enough, the highest frequency of Pisces is knowing that being enough is actually an illusion. It's a myth. It doesn't even exist. It's no such thing. There's only where we are right now, and the little bit more and the little bit more and the little bit more, the eternal, infinite, unending expansion of the universe. That's all there ever is. And in Pisces energy and high frequencies of Pisces, we not only know that, but we're energized and empowered by it. We can accept where we are because we know that everything that's come before is exactly as it was supposed to be, just like where we are right now is exactly where we're supposed to be. Acceptance, surrender, healing, transcendence. Transcending suffering into bliss. Transcending the suffering of the physical and rising above it back into the divine knowing of all is well. So many beautiful opportunities this month of April that can and will bloom around your suffering with even just opening the door of acceptance a teeny tiny little bit. one teeny tiny little bit of acceptance at a time. That's all it takes for real and radical healing. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope that your month of April is filled with a blossoming of self-compassion that you could have never imagined before. Permanent shifts of knowing the dominant well-being of this universe. Wishing that for you, myself, the all. Until next time, dear friends, you take such good care of yourselves, and so will I.